Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of Autodesk Virtual Academy presented by KETIV Technologies with me, Adam Evangelista, as your host and confidant here today. The date is August 26th, 2021. It is quite temperate outside here in Southern California. We're getting plenty of heat right now, but the last inklings of fall are kind of trickling in right now, as Justin Cow is going to be trickling into this presentation himself right now. Justin, you want to introduce yourself, man? How you doing?
I am great. Thank you for having me today, Adam.
Dude, thanks for being on, man. I
Of
was
course.
just thinking, like I was doing my work. I've been in AutoCAD in the past, and I just switched to Inventor recently, and I was like, you know what
Good for
would
you.
be great for me. I was having a lot of trouble with repeatable geometry inside of my drawings in Inventor, though. Do you know any solution for that, my man?
Adam, if you reached out earlier, I could have got
No.
you settled in a little bit
Oh
earlier, but
shoot, you were so busy though, Justin.
shoot,
I
I'm
didn't think
sorry.
you had the time.
Adam, you have my personal phone number. You can always call.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, so what do you got for us today? We're talking about sketch symbols, huh?
Yes, sir. Today we're going to be talking about sketch symbols, and I'll give you guys a little bit insight about why we're going to be talking about it in a little bit. So, are we good to start, Adam?
Yeah, and just a few notes before we get started. Again, Zoom webinar, absolute classic. I see a lot of repeat names here, but just in case you aren't familiar with the platform quite yet, it is a webinar style Zoom meeting. So there's a Q&A button where you can submit questions. We'll be monitoring and moderating throughout the session. So feel free to submit questions there. There's also a chat menu as well, which we'll be providing relevant links to throughout the presentation. So be on the lookout for that as well. We'll also be reading questions off from there. And as always, we are always taking feedback. So if you have any comments about the length, the relevancy of content, or ideas for future topics, you'd expect a survey at the end as well for future feedback that we much appreciate, as well as Justin, because I know he's very eager to improve his presentation skills. Isn't that right,
Oh,
man?
shoot, Adam's taking shots now.
Yeah, man. Okay. All right, take it away, man. Thanks for being here. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, like Adam said, everyone, if you guys have questions, feel free to stop me at any time. If I'm going too fast, too slow, please let us know and we'll get that adjusted. Alrighty, so let's get the show on the road. So today, we're going to be talking about Inventor sketch symbols, and not really about just making basic sketch symbols, but what we can do with it in the future. All right, so here is our agenda today. We're gonna go over a little bit of an introduction of myself, go over an overview of what we're going to be talking about today, jump straight into the demo, and then at the very end, we have a Q&A. Alrighty, so a little introduction on myself. I'm an application engineer at KETIV. I work on the delivery team where I work on a lot of content creation in Inventor. We've done stuff also within AutoCAD, done stuff in Revit. So I've touched a lot of the PDM collection from Autodesk. And also I do a lot of automation work within Inventor on an external API, so such as Visual Studio. So if you've been watching some of the Visual Studio videos that, for example, Philip, one of my colleagues, he's been putting a lot out on there. That's what I work on as well. I do a lot of coding work for the automation team as well. Little background about myself. I go to school at I used to go to school at Cal Poly Pomona. Already graduated. Graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. So go. Shout out to Billy the Bronco over there. And a little hobby about myself. I got into scooting. So if you guys know Nigel, one of the previous hosts, got me into scooting.
Nice. I hope we could see some high resolution pictures of your scooters one day, huh?
Maybe on the next AVA. We'll see.
All right. I'll book you for next month then. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So why sketch symbols? So recently I was on a project, an automation project, mainly for a customer that was going from AutoCAD over to Inventor. And they have very, very detailed drawings, mainly because a lot of their stuff is going into production drawings, and they want to make sure that they capture all the details. So whoever it is, the architect, the contractor, when they're putting things in, they know exactly what they're getting. The problem with that is when if you do it as a standard drawing, like dimensioning everything out, doing section views, it gets really, really, really cluttered. You see dimension lines everywhere, and it's really hard to tell what's dimensioning to what. So our team here, we developed a way that maybe we should utilize sketch symbols. And then using sketch symbols, we saw that it creates less clutter. So you get higher organization, you get more blank space, so you could add more detail whenever you want it. You can call out more specific details with dimensions on them without overlapping any geometry lines, hidden lines, whatever it is. So it's very blatant what you're seeing. And what we've been doing is we've been automating these sketch symbols so we can place them and move them around so they're in the sheet and they come out very pretty. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So it's not necessarily like your standard sketch symbols where you like make really, really simple symbols. We're going to go all the tips and tricks on how to really utilize the sketch symbol tool.
Sounds exciting, man. Right on.
All right. So what is the sketch symbol? It's found in drawing sheets, used mainly for creating custom symbols. We've seen in there's specific sketch symbols that you can call, for example, welds. That's already a standard one. What you could do is you could also make a custom one where you do material properties. You can create custom one for datums, and they also have certain ones for datums in there as well. So application sketch symbol, this is what we're going to be going over today. You can use them in a title block. Use it for part detailing, part dimensioning, and then images as well. So I'll as I go through a demo, I'll explain to you why you would do such things.
This is really interesting to me too, Justin, because this is, again, not necessarily the default application of sketch symbols, but this is specifically kind of part of your automation workflows and delivery so far. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. The reason why we wanted to do it this way, like I said, it really speeds up the process of whether you don't want to create something in Inventor,
Yeah.
and then just create it just for so you could put one base view of it. You can just use symbols, and then you could export that symbol library, and then you can share it with your colleagues if you guys are creating those very often.
Yeah.
So it's a better workflow, speed things up, and then it's repeatable. So that's always nice.
Yeah, I remember looking over sketch symbols myself initially, thinking it was almost kind of similar to AutoCAD blocks almost, right? And the same kind of concepts apply where you're saving time by just saving complex geometry, whether it be a view or like a notation or something like that. You're essentially just saving a bunch of text like that. Do you have like I don't know if you could answer this, but do you have like a time estimate perhaps on like how much time the sort of thing would save if you start applying the stuff in here?
Yeah, so just using a regular sketch symbol, right? If you're just doing basic sketch symbols like a custom weld symbol, right? And then if you have to create it every single time, that takes 5-10 minutes, right? And just say you have to do 200 drawings, for example, every year. That adds up very fast just for a regular sketch symbol. So if you have a sketch symbol library that you could share and you plop it down, it takes 5 seconds to plop it down, it takes 10 seconds to import it. So it's not really a big deal. But what we're doing in this case, where we're doing super custom stuff, for example,
further.
For example, the title block, one of our customers uses, they have 4 different title blocks, and that's just based off of what fields they have in the title block. And it's not like you could just create a custom title block and do a prompted entry and stuff like that. Yeah, but it takes time to type in that prompted entry. You don't want to be worrying about typing it. And then every time you switch title blocks, you lose all the fields if you already have it pre-populated in there. So that's why we saw, hey, using a title block and using a sketch symbol and placing it into a title block, couple seconds right there.
That sounds exciting, man. All right, let's see what you got.
Yep. All righty, let's go ahead and get the show on the road. So
yeah, and then I guess just to clarify too, Justin, this isn't specific to like modern versions of Inventor, right? Sketch symbols have been here this will be relevant for any version of Inventor, is that right?
Yep, sketch symbols have been around for a while now. So 100% 2022, 2021, seen it in 2020, 2019. But yeah, it's been really common with Inventor, and it's surprisingly it's something that's not really commonly used. There's certain industries. Yeah, there's certain industries that use it a lot for specific stuff. I know, like when fabricators that use it for welding, they have the custom ones up here on the symbols.
Yeah.
That you can see for weld, and then sometimes they have custom symbols for weld depending on what type of welding they're doing. So I see it mainly in there, but besides that, I rarely see it in any other drawings, whether it's fab drawings, production drawings, not for construction drawings, whatever it is, rarely used. So hopefully we could break some habits there and then get some people using it. All right, so here is my drawing sheet. If I collapse drawing resources right here, you're going to have your sheet format, border, title block, And right here, this is what we're concerned about today, sketch symbols. So you're going to see I already have a couple in there right now. I'll go over that in shortly, why they're there. So actually, let me go ahead and pop one down. So I have a production ready. You see it's floating on the screen right there. My cursor is super far away from it, but that's because I wanted to plop it into the title block. So now I click it there and it snaps right into there. So that is a sketch symbol. So if I wanted to go in here and create a new sketch symbol, I can just insert. Oh, sorry about that. I could actually define a new symbol. So if I define a new symbol here, I can just start sketching whatever I want. I'm going to finish the sketch because I'm not going to do anything right here. It's going to tell me that there's no sketch symbol template. So here, if I go in here and edit my sketch symbol, what do I have here? It's just a text, right? So this is what I was saying about the title block stuff. If you have text that you could put in to your title block and you don't want it as a prompted entry, or you don't want to switch between title blocks, sketch symbol, it's the way to go. What I've noticed was if I create two separate title blocks to show the different fields, sometimes it's not this short. Sometimes you have a long phrase along with it. It might say drawing, and it has like a long couple sentences that are some warnings, let you know what date this drawing was created, etc. If you do stuff like that, you don't want to be typing that manually as well, because there's room for error. You might make a spelling error. You might put the wrong date. Maybe you combine the two sketch symbols by the two title block fields by accident. So it gets really confusing really fast. You want to limit the amount of error you're going to make. I would highly recommend using a sketch symbol. Once you have it right the first time, you send it to all your engineers. They're going to get it right every single time. Alrighty, so right now I have one that says production ready. Let's say I want to create one that's not for construction, right? Maybe it's not ready. Maybe it's just in the process, and we don't want it to be accidentally mistaken for a one that's ready for fabrication. So if I define a new symbol here, I'm going to use a text box. Just throw in your text box right here, and I'm just going to put in not for construction.
And a note here too, Justin. You could still put parameters into these text boxes and stuff, right? Do you have access to like model parameters from this text box here?
Yeah. So actually, for example, you have properties here. So this is your I properties. You can use that there. I know you can do prompted text in here, standard style. You have prompted entries right here.
Right.
Sheet properties, parameters itself. You can't really access parameters within your drawing. I know you could do it for Inventor API. You could do some mapping of, like, for example, if you have your parameters, move it over to a property field, such as somewhere in here, and then you can move it over. That is also a viable way of doing it as well.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, David, in chat. Yeah, because I think if you just do a regular text field at the top drawing level, you should be able to access model parameters. Is that right?
Model parameters, I haven't tested out that too much. I know what we've been doing. If you're doing model parameters and there's like just inputting numbers, it might just be, you could just be doing a dimension to get that number out, right? Sure. So it might not make 100%. It might not make sense to do it that way. What we've done is we've done prompted entry. Prompted entry is a great way of, it's a great workaround for that. Or if you're mapping fields of numbers to your I properties, you can pull it from there within this property list.
I see. Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt, man. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. Great question. So right here, jumping back into it, we have a text box that says not for construction, right? So now that we have it there, you're going to see you have a little purple dot in the top left-hand corner. If I zoom in, you see it there. And that's pretty much the snap point of it. So that's where it's going to be placing. What I want is, I don't want to be, if I go ahead and finish the sketch, let me show you. I'm going to just call it NFC for not for construction, save it there. Let me go ahead and get rid of that sketch symbol because I want to take that place. You don't want it that you have this sketch symbol just free floating right here, and then it just snaps right there. If you look at it, it's not centered, does not look like it's in the right location. So it doesn't make sense to do it that way. What we can do, make your sketch symbol a little bit more intelligent, make it easier for placing. If I go ahead and edit it, usually when you create a new sketch symbol at first, you're going to have the title block there. We don't have the benefit of that right now, but you would place it in the location that you think it's going to be the most correct. And instead of figuring out how to plop it from here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a point. Like I said, right now we don't have the benefit of having the title block up there when we create a brand new one like we usually do. So you would create a point here. So right now that's just an arbitrary point. I'll go ahead and fix that as we get closer. And then I'm gonna select on that point. And then we're gonna set insertion point grip. So now that's my insertion point. Just say I finished my sketch here. So now if I have my insertion point there, accidentally plop it down and press too many times. If I put my insertion point right here with that little snippet point right there, you see it's picking up that green dot. It's going to place it almost in the right location. I see that it's a little bit too low. If I go back and edit it, I can bring it up a little bit higher. I could bring it up a little higher. I could also dimension it from my point. So if I want to say like, hey, I know this lock value is always going to be, for example, 29 inches. And I know this height is going to be, let's say 2.25, something like that. You're always going to have 2 dimensions needed because that's just when you place it, you could place it either in the Y direction or the X direction because we're in a 2D plane. Go ahead and save that. Let me go ahead and delete this one. Add it again. If I double tap on my sketch symbol, you're going to see it's going to snap there. And then when it snaps, you're going to have it in that location. Like I said, we could work on the dimensioning, get it more centered. But now every time you have an engineer trying to create a non-for-construction drawing for their title block, they could just plop this sketch symbol every single time. And then that way it's always consistently in the same spot. You're never going to have any spelling errors. And this is also going to speed up the process. Once you make it one time, you take the time to make it, then every single time that you use it takes a couple seconds just to put it back down. Alrighty, any questions on that?
Let's see here. We do have some questions over here. One from Rodney Keller. If you set your insertion point to the right corner, the symbol will stay where you want it in the title block if you change the sheet size. I think that was intended to be phrased as a question specifically, but yeah, so right now you're kind of referencing that bottom left corner, right, with linear dimensions. If you change sheet size, is it gonna update, or do you have to put in a new sketch symbol for that with different dimensions?
So if you're switching sheet size, I would make new sketch symbols because you saw there I dimensioned it 29 inches to the right? Maybe your sheet size is always not going to be this size. Maybe it's vertical instead of horizontal. Maybe you have a landscape, right? Or portrait, whatever it is. Inventor is always going to pick up a corner. In this case, it's always this corner right here because they consider this as the origin point. So if you have different sheet size, I would create new sketch symbols for each one because it's easier to do it that way than to say, hey, I'm going to use this sketch symbol, but I'm going to switch dimensioning, right? Because once you edit the dimension, then now whenever you switch back to another sheet size, it's not going to be in the right location.
Right,
and the nice thing with sketch symbols, like, hey, if I want to create another one like this, but maybe I want to make it 5 inches closer.
Yeah, that's fit for another sheet size. You could call it out like that.
Yeah, you could just copy it and then make a new one.
Right.
You can copy that, make a new one, switch the parameter, and then name it accordingly. So in this case, maybe I don't want to be called NFC. Maybe I want to call it like NFC sheet, or like ANSI A or something like that, depending on what sheet size you're using, or architect.
Right. And on the same topic, then I have some people asking about templates and the like. So for Christian, can you have the sketch symbol be a part of a template without having to insert it? Always be shown on the template. So
yeah, that's a great point as well. If you have it in your template, always place at a specific location and it's always popping up, then yes, it's always going to be there. So that's a great mention. Let me bring up a point. So on some of the drawings, you don't want your engineers to scale the drawing, right? You want the drawings to be exactly how they're scaled. So sometimes people have notes on there saying, hey, please do not scale this drawing. And they usually put it right above the title block, somewhere around this area. And if you have that sketch symbol there, you can also just put it as a text box, right? Text might not be the best thing. Maybe you're working for a zipper company, right? And you use the same zipper for every single one. So you create a sketch symbol of your zipper. If you always have your zipper on the sheet, it's always going to be there.
Right, right. Okay. And so I know in general with the templates and collaborating, if you wanted to share sketch symbols between multiple people and just have like the NFC sketch symbol be available on future drawings, like how do you collaborate for that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so if you go ahead and right click over here, you're going to be able to save all to a symbol library. So
Mm,
when you save all of it to a symbol library, then you're going to be able to export that, and then everyone's going to be able to have that library.
right. Okay. And then do they need to configure like project file or anything like that or path to certain places?
No, actually, you could just leave it. If you have like it's always good to have a standard. So maybe you want to keep it all on the C drive, right? So every engineer is going to have that symbol library, and every time it's updated, you can just pull from there.
I
And then
see.
every time you open up a drawing, you can just import them in. Super easy. You can also keep it, for example, in Vault. Vault's another good place to store your data. So every
Right.
time it's always getting updated with new sketch symbols, you can pull it from Vault.
Good stuff. Okay. So I
Yep.
hope that answers your question, Christian and Rudy. I think we addressed both those template type questions over there. I think I'll let you get back to it since we are getting a few more questions over here if you want to get through the rest of your material.
Yeah. So that's the one for text box right there. So next thing you could do is details, right? I can
Mhm.
go in here, manually use the dimension tool and call out these dimensions right here. Just say I want to dimension all these buttons, even though there might be typical, right? But if you notice, whenever you do dimensioning, it's going to pull a line from here and it's going to pull up to the side, and then you're going to have a bunch of interfering lines. And then that always makes a drawing look more cluttered, especially if you're dimensioning a lot of stuff, if you have a lot of critical dimensions. So what we do is, for example, we use a sketch symbol for details. So right here, I already started one, double click it, plop it down. And here is my buttons, right? So if I want to start editing it, right click, edit. I already have a bunch of dimensions in here. You can already see it looks pretty cluttered with dimensions because of what we have. So what I've done so far is I made these circles exactly how they should be sized. I have a dimension here that says 0.5 inch typical because all these buttons are going to be 0.5 inches. Even though the dimensions of these buttons are not 0.5 inches, you can see they're 1 inch. The reason why is because I want them to be bigger on my drawings. So if you do it this way, you get bigger drawings, even though they're actually not 0.5 inches. What you could also do is you could do a ratio. So you could scale them up. And if you scale them up, you could keep them at 0.5 inches to scale them up 2:1, 3:1, whatever it is. And then it'll look exactly the same way. But this way, I'm showing you the reason why I'm showing it to you this way, where, hey, these are actually 1 inch circles, but I'm calling them out as 0.5 inches because you could actually, quote unquote, you could fake a dimension, right? So if you have a detailed view, you can call out the views of it as well. But let's just say you order something from a manufacturer. Everything is not 100% accurate, right? Maybe there's a little bit of a tolerance there. What you could do is you could change your tolerance level, or you could always say, hey, this is always 0.5 inch typical, but some buttons might be 0.49, some button might be 0.51, but we have that tolerance range, right? So we have 0.5 inch typical, and you can see I even made some sketch lines in here to have dashed lines to show like, hey, it's everything is centered. So let me show you how to do that. I can just use the line tool, draw a line. And what I could do is I could just constrain it using the regular constraints. Right here is a low diagonal. It looks like I have a value off somewhere right here. 825. Boom. Now everything is straight again. And then here, it does take a little bit of dimensioning. So I always just want this to be, let's say, 1 inch longer on that side. Same as this side as well, 1 inch longer. So now I have my line back at 2 dimensions, which is what you always want whenever you're creating sketch symbols. You can never be at 100% constraint unless you fix it in this position. Usually you don't want that. You want to be able to plop it wherever you want. But now that I have this line drawn, I could click on it, do my properties, and then now I could switch my line type, right? So maybe I just want dash. Okay, now I have dash lines there. Perfect. And then something neat you can also do is you could shade these buttons. Maybe you want these to be a specific color. Go to properties. You don't see a shaded option here because it's only selecting lines. You can do other, sorry. Let me right click again. let's see. Oh, sorry, it's under hatch region. If you hatch region, now it picks up all these geometries here. Instead of the patterns, you could do solid, and then maybe you want that to be black, right? You could also go in here, switch colors. Maybe I want this to be not black. I want it to be red. Press OK. Nice. That one, maybe I don't want it red. Let me see if I can do multiple colors. Probably have to do it individually. So if, yeah, like I said, you could do colors in here as well. Boom, apply. Now you have a red button, right? Let's see if I could do a different color right here. Yep, could do different colors as well, but you have to exit every time. Kind of maybe if I press apply. Yep, just press apply and then you can change the colors of these. Well, I just do the last one as well. So if you have details like, hey, these are always the colors, you can lay them out as well. I've noticed that when people are doing material properties, they would do that. They would say, hey, my stainless steel is always gray. So that's the standard for their company. Just keep it at gray. Nothing else is going to be gray. And then here we have this, and then maybe want to do a dimension, fake a dimension, right? What I could do is I could draw, for example, these lines out here. And then I'll dimension these lines. Maybe I want them 3.5. 5. And then I'll draw a line across to show like, hey, they're getting dimension from each other. And then now we can insert a text, right? Because if this is always going to be typical, then you could be like, hey, this is always 3.5, not 3.5 inches. Let's say this is always going to be 1.5 inches away from each other. And you see how it goes on the other lines just because my text box is not big enough. So now that I have this, I can make my text box a little bit bigger, could size it correctly. What you could also do is, you see how my point is up here? We could switch that point by double clicking on it, highlight your text if you already made it, and then we could center everything. And then now that point is directly in the middle. And then now, whenever you dimension, maybe it might not be like this, where it might not be horizontal. Maybe it's going to be counterclockwise, right? So I could just rotate it counterclockwise by right clicking on it, 1.5 there. And then now I could dimension that so it's always going to be at a fixed location. So something like this, let's say I want to go ahead and finish the sketch. I'm back at 2 dimensions needed, which is perfect for my case. Say yes. So now you're going to see here my sketch symbols here. And then look, I could actually, if I delete it, double click on my button detail, you're going to see that there's no color there, but once you plop it, boom, it's color. And do you see where the center point of my cursor is with that model? Maybe you don't want it to be the center point. We could do the same thing again as we did with the other one. With this one, where we had the point over here as the insertion point, you can just define an insertion point. So again, I'll go over that. If I edit this, just say I want my insertion point to be right there. Just get your point tool, plop it there, select that point, and make it your insertion point. Save your edits. So now if I plop another one, you see how my center of my cursor is pretty much center of my sketch. There we go. And see how we fake the dimension? It looks pretty much like a dimension as if you were going to dimension it off there.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know, like when I did training, like one of the most common questions I got from people was like how to override a sketch annotation when you model when you annotate a part. And you can technically override dimensions if you want to show a different value, but with these sketch symbols in this workflow, right, you're essentially doing all of that so that this is always going to show up as 1.5 inches. So there's no no question about it, right? So this is a super standard, super time saving. No, you don't have to override anything. It's just there available in your library.
Exactly. So for example, if you're making this on a regular basis, right, you use this, maybe this button layout for thousands of your products. Have one sketch symbol, plop it in there, put it in the right location, and then keep on reusing it. That way you don't have to worry about taking the time to make these every single time. Super easy to reuse. So yeah, this is super, super neat. Something that's not very utilized, I would say. I haven't seen anyone utilize it until we started implementing it actually. So it's like, this is a really great way to utilize the sketch symbol in this case. Let's go ahead and jump on to the next one, which is, I believe it's images. We're at that point already.
All right.
Or actually, let's do something else. If I go ahead and jump and edit this right here, and just say I want to insert a text box. What we could do is a prompted entry, right? And then maybe these buttons light up, right? So I'm just going to call it lighting. Let me fix that because I want everything to be centered. It's always easier if you have things centered. So that way you don't have to worry about adjusting the length of stuff. So let's say I want it to be centered with this, just to mention that at 0, make it easy. And then pick up that point. And let's say I always want it to be on top. Somewhere right there. Hopefully I'm not interfering with any. Let's do this. I'll do 2.25 inches because I know I have a line up there. I don't want to interfere with it. Finish my sketch, say yes. Press OK for now, press OK because I have 2 sketch symbols. If I go ahead and delete both of these and place it one more time, boom, it's going to ask for a value, right? So maybe for the lighting behind these, maybe they have LED backlighting, right? If you type in LED, you're going to see LED in there. You could also do like right here, I have like a fake leader. You could do that as well and just point to it and say, hey, this is always going to be LED. That's another good workaround for it as well. Because maybe it's not always LED. You might carry it as 2 options, as LCD, LED, whatever it is. You can pretty much have a little intelligence behind your sketch symbol so you don't have to switch it back and forth. And those are really, really easy prompts to put in. You don't have to worry about making 2 sketch symbol, one for LED, one for LCD. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and jump into images. So if I defined a new sketch symbol, right? And you see how whenever I define a new one, you have everything on your sheet. So it's really easy if you do it the first time without exiting. That's a neat thing I figured out. Let's say I want to insert an image, right? And I would just say I want the image to be somewhere right here. And then maybe I want to see what the graphics look like in this case. So I already have a little Super Mario Brothers graphics right here. And this sizes to exactly what you make it. So if you want it to be bigger, you can keep on sizing it up. So it's not like I want it here because I can always play with the location of this. But if I go ahead and finish this sketch, put graphic. Press save. I could plop in this graphic right there. So if you're doing something with a display, you could give, whether you're sending this to a customer, sending this for the to a contractor, and they need to know what specific graphic needs to be loaded up on the screen, you can be like, hey, this is the graphic to use. So this is a super neat way to do it as well. If you want to insert a live image of what your thing actually looks like in the right location, you can insert that. Yeah, there's a lot of neat things you can do with this graphic stuff. Alrighty, and then like I said, whenever you're ready, you could save all to a symbol library. Once you save it, you can export it, and then everyone else could export that library and save it. All right, that is the end of my demo. Let's see, make sure we covered everything. We got title block stuff, went over part detail, part dimensioning, as well as images. Alrighty, demo is good. quick tip, if you guys wanted to get into a little bit of automation stuff, like automating these sketch symbols, for example, go ahead and check out our playlist. There might be something in there that might help you out. This is under our KETIV YouTube page, and we have one specifically for iLogic, but not necessarily only iLogic. It does also Inventor API. Here's some contact information about myself. If you have any questions about the AVA, anything in general, automation, content creation, whatever it is, feel free to reach out to me. Here's KETIV's number. You can also call KETIV. Kathy's at the front desk. She would direct you to me, direct you to anyone on the automation team. Here is a link for my LinkedIn if you guys are interested in that as well. But if there's nothing of that, we'll go ahead and jump over to the question and answer. Below is KETIV support number as well, if you want to talk to Adam.
Oh shoot. All right, we got a lot of concerns in the chat for you over here,
concerns?
Justin.
No.
No, everyone's kind of worried about the way dimensions and stuff, but okay, let's work down this list, shall we? Okay, so looking at the Q&A, a few questions. Here's from Jose Reyes. Can you suppress and unsuppress sketch symbols?
You could write a little logic behind it, but it's not that hard to just delete and then place it again. It might just be better that way. You don't want to have a drawing that you're going to send out to production. You're like, oh shoot, I forgot to turn off that sketch symbol. Rather just delete it, place it again, takes a couple of seconds. That's always the best work to do.
As I think in drawings too. I mean, do you still have like the visibility toggle on like sketches and sketch symbols and stuff?
Let's take a look.
If not like suppress and stuff, you know?
So if I'm under the sketch symbols, usually I could just right click and suppress it like I do in a part, right? I don't see anything in here that says that you could suppress it. But it's like pretty easy. Just press delete. If you want it back, say, oh, shoot, wrong one, place it back. You can put your prompt to text again. Then, yeah, 5 seconds. That's probably the best work through for that.
I got you. Okay. And then next up, we have what's the best process for updating existing placed sketch symbols when you go and edit the definition, other than deleting and placing it again?
I like actually personally deleting and placing it again. It's just because whatever is on there. Let me tell you why, actually. So when we were doing our automation project, sometimes when you update the sketch symbols, sometimes Inventor, depending on what your Inventor you have, what updates you have, sometimes Inventor doesn't update instantly. And it's just a weird thing. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I always like to delete it, start fresh. It's always better to start fresh. And then instead of making a drawing and then you realize that, hey, I messed up because something is too far away. So I always like to just start fresh in that sense. And like I said, if you can create the sketch symbol in one shot, you have all this detail up here. You have your drawing sheet, your title block. If you could create it in one shot, you have the option of seeing where everything is laid out. That's always nice as well.
Yeah, and I know, especially coming from like AutoCAD and stuff like that, I think AutoCAD Electrical also has ways to kind of replace, update title blocks and update blocks within a drawing and stuff. I'm not sure what like you said, I think the best option is maybe just going through and deleting it all again. I'm not sure, but I don't know an explicit way to go about doing that without just deleting and placing them again. So it seems to have a benefit for automation though, regardless.
Yeah, so let me say it like this. On the project that I was working on, we had to place maybe like 7 or 8 different sketch symbols. And 7 or 8 sketch symbols, yeah, they take a long time to make, but once you have them, you can keep on placing them really fast. But like I had to edit all of them and then place them all again. Placing them only took me like a minute to place 8 of them in the right location.
I got you.
And especially if you're automating it, if you automate it so it's always in the right location every single time, even after you make the edit, automation is the way to go for that.
I got you. In a similar vein too, we were talking earlier about kind of setting, setting dimensions from the lower left corner that might change with page size. Some people in the comments were specifying specifically, you could probably just go to the bottom right corner specifically and dimension off of that, since that distance should be fixed if you're placing title block in the bottom right every time. So that's something to consider as well. Yeah,
that's an option as well. And just to, right now I'm just using the standard title block of Inventor. So if you are creating custom title blocks, just take that into account as well. But yeah, bottom right is always good. Left, I don't know why we chose left, but I know like for all of us on the team, it's just easier because whenever we're doing automation, the sheet size actually goes from left to right. So that's why it's just more intuitive instead of us going from the right to the left. Then we have to do all this math.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that's closer to like the origin point for like calculations and orientation and stuff like that too, I'm sure.
Yeah, so just for me, it's just off habit of
Yeah.
using the left instead of the right, but it's
Yeah.
just because of my automation background.
I was gonna say, yeah, I mean, there's all of this stuff is highly configurable, right? And so any kind of dimensions you placed or what you want to do, you can pretty much do it however you want
Yeah.
within the realms of regular sketching and dimensioning, right?
Yeah, 1,000 ways to skin a cat. It's just whatever way you want to choose.
Exactly. I would never harm a cat or any animals, nor does KETIV condone such behavior. But we have another question from Eric over here. But just to note, yeah, the symbol library, right, and a lot of the drawing resources, they're often just collected in the design data folder in your project file as well. And so that's what we were talking about earlier, right? So if you are looking to collaborate, you should have some shared location. Sometimes it's called out in the project file, or you have some kind of, well, might be in the vault, might be on a network server, might be locally, but that path's usually called out in the project file for design data. So
Yep.
be sure to look out for that. But
So
presumably
yeah,
your company's already there. Yeah.
a nice thing that you could do also, someone mentioned earlier about having a template sheet, having all your sketch symbols in a template sheet.
Yep.
If you have everything in your template sheet, then you never have to worry about importing, exporting, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Once it's there,
exactly.
Keep on placing it. You're good to go.
Yeah. So that's definitely a bigger conversation in general, right? Like standardization and collaborating. And so once that gets set up, obviously this is a bit simpler to do, but it might be a different question. So feel free to reach out if you have more questions about design data and collaborating in Vault and Inventor. We talked about this question earlier too. So can you utilize parameters in the symbols instead of entering 0.825? Why not just make it equal to the 0.85 existing dimension? I think we addressed this already, and that's when you go into the sketch, we don't have access to the model parameters. Is that correct?
Yeah, you don't have model parameters up here. It's kind of, nothing that I've seen. It's just easier in that sense, because like when sometimes you do this, we could do it, make it true 1-to-1, and then we could scale this up. In this case, I didn't do it true because I wanted to show you guys, hey, you don't have to actually make it the exact thing for it, and then you could fake a dimension like right here, 0.5 inches, even though a dimension is just 1 inch. You could just scale it up. Scaling is always an option, but just like I said, there's you can't access parameters, which is always a downside. And then the reason why I can't just dimension, like, hey, let me dimension this right here. When you select the dimension tool, it doesn't pick up any lines on this sketch symbol. So that's why we have to do dimensions out here.
Correct. Yeah. And so just to kind of emphasize that as well, like the sketch symbols kind of exist separate from the drawing and separate from the part itself, right? You're literally just kind of hard sketching and hard coding that symbol to be as is, right? That's generally the kind of expected workflow over here. And I was testing it out earlier. And if you do in regular drawings, if you do have a model view up at the moment, you could still make a text box and you could still get to the parameter models, but in the drawing level, not in the symbol level specifically. Okay. Yeah. At that point, you have access to the model, yada, yada, yada. But anyways,
with automation, I think with automation, you can do some stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's a big, that's a big stretch if you're just going to want to put little parameters in here and then learn automation for that.
That's another cat to skin, dude. Oh my God.
Oh, we don't condone hurting animals here.
All right. So, and then from Jose as well, how do you prevent these sketch symbols from being changed? Can you speak to like security and like write permissions on these symbol libraries?
To speak on that, I have to get back to you on that. But one thing that we've noticed whenever we create these sketch symbols for customers, if we have it in a centralized location on a template, like in Vault, right? Vault is always going to be your master copy. Make sure no one overrides that one. If your engineer decides like, hey, I want to take these sketch symbols and start mucking around with it, and then he checks it back in, then that's not the workflow he should be following. In the case that he is trying to create new sketch symbols, then yeah, maybe that's a little bit more forgiving in that sense. You can go in there, modify them. If you, like I said, you can copy these sketch symbols and make a new sketch symbol. If maybe just say the spacing change, right? And you don't want to just say, hey, sometimes we still use the 1.5 inch spacing, but now we need one for 2.5 inch spacing. Just create a new sketch symbol. Just do a copy, create a new one, change that dimension. You can even make it look exactly the same, but just say, hey, call it out as something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, the best security, we always love implementing Vault. Vault's always a good place to keep your data. And especially if someone accidentally makes a mistake in one of the sketch symbols, you can always revert back to an older version.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point, right? And so, like Justin was saying, Vault has all sorts of securities, right? So if you're keeping these drawing resources in the Vault, you could have Vault securities applied there. But like with everything else on the kind of styles and inventor side, right? It's going to be really similar to how you manage your styles library, where you could have a protected path, you could have like like network security or something like that. It's going to be the same as any other kind of things you want to protect from writing on the project file. Okay, cool. And then we did get a few comments about your sketch methods over here. Let's see what's
Oh
going
no.
on.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I noticed when you were doing the sketch editing, you had like a lot of individual dimensions. Could you go into the edit sketch symbol for me, Justin?
Yes, sir. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so these are all really common comments and complaints for sure. And so obviously this isn't that pretty with all the dimensioning and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, definitely you can use constraints. Not saying you
Yeah.
can't use constraints. Just chose a different way to do it. There's 1,000 ways to do it. You want to make it look cleaner? Definitely can make it look cleaner.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to make sure, like there wasn't any like particular automation purpose that you were doing individual dimensions and stuff. Is that correct?
No, I don't know. Part of me is like I like to see dimensions, even though this is kind of like a cluttered mess. I could see through this pretty easily because I do this day in, day out.
Yeah.
So like if and mainly the reason why I do this is because in some cases I have to be changing this quite frequently.
Yeah.
Because sometimes customers have a sketch symbol and they're on a really tight size constraint, right? So maybe I can't actually make the spacing true on all sides, right? Maybe one needs to be bigger than the other, just so I can fit a size constraint, just so I can manipulate it a lot easier. Because if I have all these things linked later down the road, if I like realize I need to change something, maybe I only need to change one of them, then I have to break the link and then go back in there. I can just manually go in there and change the dimension. So it's just a habit thing. There's 1,000 ways to do one thing. Just choose what's more intuitive. But in the case that you're doing a lot of custom stuff, I do recommend doing a lot more dimensioning. You can use constraints. Constraints are not bad at all. But yeah, it's just I for my purpose, I do a lot of custom stuff. So I always like to dimension a lot of stuff, so I have a lot of control over the sketches that I'm making.
Yeah, exactly. And this comes up a lot in training too, right? Like they kind of ask us the difference, like, why would I just do all linear dimensions versus just like mixing constraints in? When do I do one or the other? You're really looking for like a hybrid method ultimately, and what works for you guys to be most efficient, right? So as long as you guys are efficient placing your dimensions and your constraints, like that's all that really matters, right?
Yep.
And yeah, so I mean, Justin's working on this all the time, so he doesn't necessarily have someone else that has to come in here and interpret these dimensions, but that'll depend on preference for sure. And another note too, yeah, like zero dimensions in general are kind of wacky.
Yeah, zero dimensions are wacky. I just did it for the simplicity.
No worries. Yeah, I remember. Even in some previous versions, I remember I wasn't able to like do zero constraints on like whole sketches or something like that. But in general, yeah, zero dimensions are always kind of a small gamble for sure. So
yeah, 100%.
Efficiency, simplicity, always the emphasis, but it comes down to preference at the end of the day for that sort of thing as well.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then one more comment over here. Let me read this. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, keeping efficiency in mind, don't store all your symbols in your templates. Doing that makes your template itself a much larger file than it needs to be. Keep an empty IDW as a symbol library and then pull them there as needed. Yeah, so that's an interesting point too, right? So
yep, like definitely interesting. But let me, on one of the projects that I was working on, we have a sketch symbol, all the sketch symbols in the template, and there's at least 20, 30 symbols in there. And there is not a performance issue at all, actually. These are pretty small. You got to keep in mind, these are all just 2D. Yeah, it does add a little bit of file size, but it does not slow down the template that much. If you're creating something super, super extravagant in a sketch symbol, then yeah, it's going to slow it down. But what I've noticed, if I can make 50 of these and it's not going to slow that template down. And in automation, it's just fractions of a second.
Yeah, I've seen some of your guys' drawings. They have like a lot of sketch symbols, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in general, right, like just considering like, you know, where you're storing your resources, right? You don't necessarily want to keep everything on a single file if you could avoid it, of course.
Yep.
But you know, that's the same thing as with anything. If you can simplify it, definitely go ahead and do it. But otherwise, sketches and 2D drawings generally don't take up too much performance. I know, Justin, you have like a 3070 or something like that now. Is that right?
Yeah, super fast. All the performance.
Dang, okay. I'm sorry we can't all have 3080s over here for 50 sketches.
Adam will sponsor everyone on this call with 3080.
Oh, if they ever come back in stock, you know. So, but yeah, so Yeah, I think this is a great topic for sure, right? Because I mean, kind of what Justin's talking about here so far, it's about kind of simplifying your workflow and like having repeatable geometry and processes to kind of place your stuff down in here. This leads and is part of a bigger conversation about efficiency, about collaboration, about repeatable work for sure. And so, you know, it's how you set up your vault and how you set up your project file and, you know, where do you put your resources exactly and how do you secure them? Part of a much larger conversation for sure. And so, in general, of course, keep it simple if you can, but we're happy to talk about any of those questions if you guys have more concerns from here. Do you want to go back to the Q&A slide for me, just so we have our contact info over there?
Yeah. So just a quick note, this doesn't help anyone if you're creating sketch symbols and you're sharing it for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you're able to share it with your company. Make sure it's accessible for
Exactly.
everyone. So yeah, it's not gonna, if it slows you down, if it makes you faster, but it makes everyone slower, then maybe you should share it with everyone else.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. Yeah, and then I do have to address this model parameter thing one more time. So again, at the drawing level in a IDW or Inventor, if you make a text box with a drawing view and view, you could access model parameters that way, but not inside of the sketch symbol sketch when you're editing that. Okay. Any last comments here, man? You have any other concerns or questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Apparently, yes, you can. To double check that, I'm sorry. Okay. But any last comments over here, Justin? Anything you want to close out here?
Nothing for me. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us here, whether at support KETIV. You can call KETIV and then they can transfer you to any one of the automation team, Lifeline team, Streamline, whatever it is. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Always open to answering anything that you guys have. Or if you guys feel like, hey, maybe we could speed up our processes at the company that you're working at a little bit better, we're definitely here to help you guys out. We're here for you guys.
Perfect, man. Right. Okay. Yeah. Appreciate everything. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to follow up. There is a survey after this. So appreciate any feedback for any other discussion or questions you guys are curious about. And yeah,
I think also another note, Adam, right? We're going to share this data set with everyone. So if whoever wants to work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll have this info available with the YouTube upload in the future. And we have that for the last one as well. So if you guys are on for like Philip's last presentation, we should be, when that goes up, that'll have the data set available to download as well. So look forward to that and any other coming changes from AVA from here. Okay, cool. So appreciate the time again, Justin. Thanks for being on. We always appreciate your time. And thanks to everyone for watching over here. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Stay safe. Talk to y'all later.